We want to return to our top story now, that series of troubling Taliban attacks that have been launched in Afghanistan, part really of a trend that we have been seeing even as allied troops, including the U.S., preparing to really draw down their forces in that country. Let's bring in Jason Campbell. He's Associate Policy Analyst at the RAND Corporation. He joins us from Washington. Jason, good to have you with us. You know, one only has to look at what's going on in Iraq today, see the chaos there, and wonder, does that lie ahead in Afghanistan? What do you think?
Well, Jim, there are some parallels. I think it's still very early to say definitively that Afghanistan risks becoming another Iraq. Hopefully, the United States and some other troop contributing nations within the NATO coalition will look very closely at Iraq as they make their Afghanistan policy going forward. And while this recent spate of attacks in Afghanistan is certainly troubling, you need to keep in mind the context. And right now, we are in a very big transitional phase, not only from the coalition standpoint, but from the governing standpoint in Afghanistan, where you still have a newly elected and still very fragile coalition government that's still trying to be formed. So there are definitely some vulnerabilities in Afghanistan, and I think these recent attacks are indicative of that, in that the Taliban do see an opportunity here to try to capitalize.
Is the international policy, is U.S. policy in Afghanistan flawed?
Well, I think there are some flaws. I think that back a few months ago, when the Obama administration announced that there would be roughly 10,000 U.S. troops remaining after 2014 in Afghanistan, I think they unwisely decided to also announce the rest of the planning for Afghanistan, specifically cutting the forces in half by the end of 2015. And then pulling all troops out completely by the end of 2016.
It's been years, and anybody that's been to Afghanistan knows it's a trip that's measured not in the miles you travel, but the seemingly, not decades even, but centuries you go back. I don't know whether another 10 years of international presence there is really going to change that society to mold it into what we really expected from the outset.
Right, and Jim, that's a fair assessment. And there, as I said at the outset, there is a lot unknown right now. What we do know is we are going through a tremendous transition right now that no one really knows how it's going to go. And you know, trying to look out 2 or 3 years
Jason, then what can we do? What should be done?
Right now, we need to stick to the plan going forward. We're going to have roughly 12,000 NATO combined troops in Afghanistan, continuing to have a regional presence and provided much needed support to Afghan security forces. And right now, going forward, we need to keep the Afghan government from suffering a catastrophic loss. And what I mean by that is having a large military base overrun or having the government otherwise fall apart. I think short of that, these attacks recently have been very troublesome, yes, but when you're having these a number of just sort of one-off smaller attacks is not favorable, but you can survive that. What we don't want to see is a complete crumbling of the Afghan security forces or the government.